to Yusur Institute's sustainability webinar series, the latest installment. This one we will be focusing on circular economy and the city. We had a nice webinar a few weeks ago where we focused on football, fashion, and circular economy. If someone is interested in taking a look at that again, it's available on the Yusur Institute's YouTube channel. Yusur Institute is delivering sustainability webinars from time to time and has done quite a number of these ones over the years. So there is a bit of a back catalog as well to go through if you wish. I'm Orjan Lundberg. I'll be your host for this next hour or so, where we will take a good look at circular economy and the city. As we go through this one, please put your questions in the chat box. I have a couple of questions prepared here on my notes. Hopefully I will not need to use those because you will put so many nice questions that I will be able to pick up, and you will do let me do a very simple, easy job just reading out your questions for our panelists, or I will take some of my questions to keep the conversation going. If you are looking for more information about the sustainability program of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar next year, please visit the website qatar2022.qa/sustainability or fifa.com/sustainability. There's tons of information there about the sustainability program for that, including some of these education series that we're looking at as part of our sustainability program and our sustainability efforts. The other thing before we get going is when we had the circular economy webinar last time, we actually received quite a lot of feedback from you saying, this was good, this you should do different, please talk about this next time, etc., etc. Please do get in touch. We're very happy to hear from you, and to some extent these webinars are being organized for us to have fun and talk about topics that we care about, but also for you as participants to learn, engage, and get inspired, really. So if there's some topic that you want to hear about, if you know of a great speaker, if you want to be a speaker or something like that, please let us know, and we can see what we can do around that. It's really good to get in touch with everybody. So today I'm joined by 4 panelists. We will first hear from Dr. Alexandre Hedjazi, who is a professor at University of Geneva and an expert in global environmental policy. We will then hear from my colleague, Dr. Talar Sahsuvaroglu from the Supreme Committee, who will take us through some of the circular economy elements of our construction program and how we are building things for the World Cup. Later, we will go to Dr. Gaia Pretner, who is our sustainable procurement manager in the Qatar 2022 World Cup organization, but also has very interesting experience from the EXPO 2015 in Milan. And she will draw out some nice case studies from the experience there, talking about how an event can be circular. And last but definitely not least, our guest will be Ghanim Al-Sulaiti, who is, I would say, one of the leading circular economy, green sustainability entrepreneurs here in Qatar and perhaps in the region. So we will hear a bit more about his story on how that came to be as the end of this. So talking about the city, talking about planning the city, how we're building in the city, how we're hosting events in the city, and perhaps also at the end, how we are doing business in the city and how we can change the standard models of doing business towards something more circular and more sustainable. So I'm looking forward to this. First, I will hand over to Dr. Alexandre. Thank you so much for joining us from Geneva. And I was actually going to say one of the awesome things about these type of webinars is we can have participants speaking from all over the world. We can have participants listening in from all over the world. And one of my colleagues today said he was going to join in the webinar from the gym. So you can do anything. So keep lifting those weights if you're listening in at the moment. So Dr. Alexandre, thank you so much for joining us. And we're looking forward to hear some of your perspectives on, I guess, best practices, learnings on how to plan and set up a city for circular economy.
Thank you very much, Orjan. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of my insight from the city of Geneva here in Switzerland on the issue of circular economy in cities. And obviously, when we talk about circular economy in cities, infrastructures matter. And when we put all this in the perspective of the World Cup, mega infrastructures matter even more. And this is, depending on the literature, called critical infrastructures, mega infrastructures, and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, because of the scope of the activities involved with these infrastructures and the scale of operations, they have an undeniable impact on sustainability strategies and including circular economy. So I would like to share with you a few slides that I think will sum up of my thoughts, and hopefully we will have time for discussions. And please stop me if you see that I am too long. And here I wanted just to share with you, interestingly, this site that you see on this photo is not recognizable today because it's all fenced and journalists and military and security for the Russia-US summit today and tomorrow here in Geneva. But nevertheless, this is a new addition to the infrastructures of Geneva. And as you can see, there's a much of gray infrastructure. This is what we call in our urban planning jargon, green infrastructure. There was the place of the greenery and the beaches that you can see, there were just water. Very different from land reclamations that we see elsewhere in the world. This project has multiple purposes. One purpose is to move towards inclusive and circular economy by bringing back some of people that were going elsewhere to spend their money for their leisure and recreation, by providing them with the right infrastructure at home. The second element is the revitalization or revival or renaturing of the green infrastructure. And you cannot see it here, but besides this green grass area, you have marshes that have been revitalized. And this brings back the biodiversity of the place that has been destroyed through all the years of urbanization. But this image is precisely what I wanted to start with, to share with you the lasting or long-lasting value creation through critical infrastructure and nature-based solution that will have a very, very positive effect on the economy of the place. And I'll explain this shortly through the slides. But first of all, what is the link between these mega events for example, the World Cup, the critical infrastructures, and urban sustainability transitions? Most of the cities across the planet have been engaged in sustainability transitions. Nevertheless, there are a lot of pitfalls, there are a lot of slowdowns and impediments towards moving ahead, partly because of conflicting priorities of the different stakeholders. And one thing that critical infrastructures and mega events bring to urban circular economy is the element of acceleration, be it the Olympic Games, and one of the greenest ones, it was the London game that you see on the upper right hand. The infrastructure, the critical infrastructure, mega infrastructure here in Doha is not the exception to the rule, as well as what you see more and more is the mixed uses of public areas and also green infrastructure. In this case, you see a race, regatta that took place in Geneva this weekend, Le Bol d'Or, and was also benefiting tremendously from the project that I just showed you with the extension of the marina here in Geneva. But what connects all this, sorry, I'm going too fast on the slides, what connects all this is obviously the impact of the events on the city, as I said, because of the scope and scale of the activity, connecting the global agenda with the local. And this is very, I would say, almost a low-hanging fruit and easy reach if you want to have a shortcut between the global agenda on sustainability and local particularities. And then making the games, the events, that mega events, exemplary incentive and functions to scale up, to reproduce later on. And the games, and I can use the case of Switzerland, are not exception to the rule here in Switzerland. That there was a bidding for the Winter Olympics in Sion 2026. And the general understanding and the general mood of the population, because it was being a referendum was needed to accept the games, despite the acceptance of the Swiss government, the population rejected it for multiple reasons, including the lack of clarity and transparency in terms of long-term sustainability impacts of the games. There has been a lot of tools and methodologies that have been used recently by different authorities, including the Olympic Game, an Olympic Game impact study through the organization, and that has been used through since the Vancouver 2010 Games. But also policy integration through OGI has been implemented in the beginning. Nevertheless, on long term, did not materialize. And OGI sustainability was dropped recently by IOC in favor of the legacy dimension that I will explain shortly is also very important. These are the examples of some of the games that have implemented some of the sustainability agendas, from Lillehammer in '94 to Paris 2024, that has won the bid for the games based on some of the elements of the sustainability that Martin mentioned. Again, East London was one of the good examples of how you can benefit, or local economy can benefit from some of these elements of the Olympic Games and Olympic Committee. I want to move fast forward to, because time is short, to the first element that I wanted to share with you, the integration of infrasystems. Again, infrastructures are the critical infrastructures by their scope and scale are very important for the sustainability agenda. They can accelerate or impede the sustainability agenda of a country or a city. And in this case, I want to share with you a very interesting project from the city of Geneva, the airport. The new airport, the airport has been under the pressure to add capacity, and there was a project for many years to extend with a new terminal at the airport. As you can see, this is one of the last intercontinental urban airports. It's literally within the city and close to the lake. And as you can imagine, as for the Olympic Games of Sion, there was a lot of opposition from the population to have this extension or expansion of the airport for the obvious environmental externalities. And after many years of stalemate, the local utility operator jumped in and said, listen, to the various stakeholders, including the associations of population, we have a project of using the water of the lake for the cooling, remote cooling and heating system of Geneva across the banking neighborhood, across the UN neighborhood, but also all the way could be all the way to the airport. Why not taking advantage of this to reduce your carbon emissions by using the water of the lake for the cooling and the heating of the new terminal, and therefore address some of the very valid and legitimate concerns of the population. This went through, and through the kind of technical assistance of the operator, a new, I would say, stakeholders, unexpected stakeholders in the expansion of the airport, the project moved ahead, and it was validated by the population and the different authorities. And I don't get into details of what it is, but that's what you see on the diagram, with the using of the water of the lake, the differential of the temperature, 7 degrees all the way to the temperature that needs to be cooled down or heat up. And that's what happened at the end. And between these three stakeholders that were essential for the deployment of the new terminal and the obvious implications for the economy of the city, because it's going to enable long-haul flights to land in Geneva, both with the state, the city, the airport, the utility company, but also the neighboring cities, all benefited from the project for the simple reason that the airport became a hub and the extension of the existing sustainable energy remote heating and cooling project of City of Geneva. So this whole red area did not exist before. And as a result of connecting this critical infrastructure to the network, you see that a project can move ahead with a very counterintuitive stakeholders, and in this case, not related to air transportation, not related to the airport at the first place, which was the utility company that jumped in, and at the end of the day, the project could be move on and the build-up started. So the first conclusion that I want to share with you is that critical infrastructures do matter for a new insight on urban economy and circularity of the economy because of the environmental predicaments, because of social and cultural dimensions of their activities. And obviously, what is of interest to us here is the elements that relate to the economy of the place, with the employment, with obviously the deployment of new tools towards green infrastructures, which creates professional competencies towards that goal with green jobs, and prevents also loss of revenue, develop revenue based on the extension of some of the needed capacity for growth, and obviously enables revenue out of some of the activities that were not at the first place related to the infrastructure itself. And you have many other projects that are related to this airport project that I rather pass on, but nevertheless, it's a very interesting case study. The second case, and there are only 3 of these, that I wanted to show is improving a local economy or moving towards circularity through revitalizing ecosystems and local green infrastructure. And here in Geneva, like many other places, we have been witnessing a lot of deterioration and destruction of watersheds. And some rivers have been transferred, as you can see on the photo, to canals. And what is the end result, of the revitalization projects, which by recreating the riverbed that did not exist anymore, same patterns by biomimicking some of the construction elements. For example, you see here the lozenges are to slow down the water so that you can have some of the species that have left this river to come back and recreates an environment which is as close as possible to the original river, and that's what you get at the end. And here you have the old channel that has been covered. It's a place of leisure that did not exist before, and recreation and picnic. And these elements are very important also for local attractivity or attractivity of the local economy, because they do bring people back to the city, where city has been associated for a long time, some of the cities, to all the ails and difficulties and externalities associated to city life and social pollutions. The last element, this last case, is green urban planning that I wanted to share with you. And this is what is happening currently, and this is a post-COVID recovery plan to extend some of the biking paths across the city by using new techniques, very simple techniques, but nevertheless extremely meaningful. And in places such as Qatar and Doha, where water is scarce or precipitation irregular, these kind of very simple techniques can also be very beneficial as a result of deployment of these critical infrastructures. And in this case, it's about breaking the asphalt so that with the new pavement, you permeabilize the soil when there's a massive rain, the water infiltrates into the aquifer. And these very simple practices at the big scale, at the scale of the city, can obviously affect very positively the environmental dimension of sustainability, and again, have a positive effect on the attractivity of the city and therefore its economy. And I end up on this by going back to this project that I showed you in the beginning, the new marina and the extension. This is on the triangle that you see is the marshland that have been revitalized. And all this area, the triangle, was the lake previously, with no function other than the normal lake function, I would say. Now the economy is benefiting from this location with space of leisure and recreation and so on. And I finish on this. I'll be happy to expand more. I know the time is short. Apologies for being blocked.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Very interesting presentation, and I think I need to book a trip to Geneva to take a look around these new attractions. Very nice, very interesting. I was wondering if you could just expand a little bit on a city like Doha, which is growing so rapidly, and many cities around the world are growing very rapidly. And how do we control these kind of developments? How do we embed these type of principles in an environment where cities are growing so fast? We know there's urbanization across the world really, and cities are growing so fast. How do we control it? How do we do it?
Well, Orjan, there isn't much that we can do to stop the attractivity of the cities. The cities will always be attractive.
Yes.
You can either mandatory, on a mandatory base or on some sort of controlling policy, limit the influx of the population and control also the economy, but it's not to the benefit of the place. The example comes actually from Geneva. In Geneva, there was a moratorium for constructions and build up or buildings for residential purposes for 10, 15 years. And as a result of that, obviously the price of rent went up, the housing went up, and this affected the attractivity of the city. So in the rankings of most desirable cities, Geneva lost a lot of momentum and lost its ranking to the benefit of those cities that had invested with subsidies and other financial tools in their housing system, not by building more, but by enabling the part of the population that didn't have access to appropriate housing to have access and improve basically what the conditions of the housing was. So the example of housing is also can be extended to business, to the facilities, business buildings and other facilities that are needed for business. You need the build-up and development in non-limited development is not possible for many obvious reasons. What is possible is to upgrade and improve what we have. And this is something that is the trend right now, to do the best that we can with what we have. And in this case, the games, the mega events, for example, the World Cup in Qatar, are the privileged opportunities to make this transition, to use whatever is going to be built long-term with different uses, with some incentives, financial incentives and facilities, so that we bring some people, some population, some businesses back to the places that were not, those infrastructures were not intended in the beginning. And this multi-purpose dimension is also an element that I would really like to highlight and is the future of sustainable planning, is how to make some of the spaces that are the legacies of these mega events as spaces that can be appropriate or dedicated to other activities than the ones that they were designed.
Thank you so much, and what a nice way to hand over to our next speaker. I mean, the focus of Dr. Talar's presentation, I believe, is going to be more about the construction principles and practices that were implemented, but many of the principles that you talked about has also been included in this program, and she might touch on that. Dr. Talar, the floor is yours.
Dr. Hedjazi, thank you very much for your talk. It's very interesting, and I think there's a lot more we would love to hear from you from. Gosh, there's so much to learn, and we appreciate that. Fantastic. So actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about the privilege we've had with the planning and the development and the implications of the tournament that we're hosting. I grew up in Doha, so for me, I can see the change of the city over a long time, over actually a very short time, but very big changes. There are images like this all over the internet that show where we came from, where we are over a very short period of time. I don't think when my kids grow up, they'll see this kind of change in the same setting. So with this kind of change comes great responsibility to make sure we're trying and avoiding the pitfalls that Dr. Hedjazi had told us about. We're very lucky to work and to be part of a country where the leadership strongly believes also in sustainable development. The Qatar National Vision guides the work that we do in our sustainability department, as well as many other government organizations in the country, and as well as entrepreneurs and businesses and procurement. So I think that when you have the space where it comes from leadership, there is a lot of privilege, right, and responsibility to get it right. Just as another example, the Qatar National Day is a very important day in Qatar's history and happens every year on the 18th of December. And especially every year is a different kind of celebration or token or a sentence of power. And actually this year's one, which was just released yesterday, talks about the strong importance of Qataris and the relationship that they've built with their environment. It's something that is very personal to a lot of the families and the history that we work with here. But this is a very big topic, and I'm going to try and focus a little bit, if I can, on what we've tried to do through our construction program, which is very intensive. And as we were talking about, this responsibility that comes with it. So very generally, we want to try and avoid a linear economy. This is a culmination of many papers that talk about what descriptions are going to be used. And so we want to try and avoid this take and make waste system and try to find ways in which we can make a circular economy based on the work that we do. One case study I want to show you about is Ahmed bin Ali Stadium in Al Rayyan. It used to look like this. It was a stadium that was used by the Al Rayyan team. At the time when we were going to build a new one, an assessment was done on whether it would be more sustainable to demolish this one and build a new one, or to expand on this one, or what was going to be the best sustainable way to make it work. And of course, sustainability has to work in all avenues. It has to make economic sense, environmental sense, as well as human and social. And through the assessment, there was identification of a lot of actual pieces of the stadium that were going to be able to be reused. And so these shows some images of the deconstruction process. But some of the great news that we were able actually to achieve is that approximately 80 to 90% of this old stadium was able to be reused or recycled or used in another project. And so things such as timber doors, windows were used in accommodation that was needed to be built for the workers on the site. Water fixtures were also used. There were some really creative projects by taking parts of the stadium and using them in art projects. Concrete was crushed and then reused. Qatar Steel received a lot of the reinforcement steel and was able to recycle it for use in the steel that's sold in the country. Scrap wood was taken and recycled. Even the lights that were in the old stadium were then reused to make training grounds for the team to continue playing while the construction was underway. And this is what it looks like now, which is a great place for it to come, but also such a great story that it didn't go to waste and we were able to reuse it. Also within the construction of the new stadium, there was a lot of focus and activities and pressure from us as the client, but also responsibility from the contractors and the project managers to be as sustainable as they could. And what this led into was a very strict waste management process within the stadiums. And what this meant was that we tried to reduce in the design, the materials that needed to come in, to reuse what materials we were able to, and recycle where it was able to. Another case study, which is a little bit more special to my heart, because it's in a place where we used to have a beach club and where people went and used the beach, is the Ras Ababoud Stadium. For some of you that may know or have been here for a long time, this is the old Gulf Hotel, which is now the new Marriott. And this area is where there was a Qatar Petroleum, so one of the lead industry processor here in Qatar, where they had offices and training sites and other structures in there. So these are the views that it looked like a long time ago. But this site also, because it was an industrial site, had some contamination in it. And so there was a big program to try and remove or process as much contaminated soil as possible, treat contaminated water, and get the site ready in a way that it can accept people to host a tournament, but also improve the site so that when we leave, as the demountable stadium I'll talk about in a minute, we leave actually an improved site with site conditions, because the location is phenomenal. You can see from the view here, you see all of downtown Doha, as we call it. And it's not a land that you want to waste. It's a land that you want to find something really interesting to do. There were lots of old structures in the in the site. Some have been retained because they're of historical storytelling or importance, or the museums have asked that we keep them. A lot was demolished, and that required a very intensive environmental program to protect from things like asbestos exposure, and make sure it's all recycled in the right ways. There were trees on site, and these trees, we didn't want to just remove them as waste. So these trees that were in healthy condition were transplanted in the SC nursery. The SC nursery is growing thousands of trees that will be able to be replanted in the sites once they are ready. We also had a very interesting situation in this stadium where the water that we had to dewater in order to do the construction part of it was actually contaminated. And so we didn't want to pour this water back into the ocean or back into the aquifer. So actually the design of the stadium was changed somewhat. And so the stadium was raised, so we didn't have to dig as low. But also we ended up doing a really neat, I think really neat, because I'm an environmental person, is that the water that was taken out was treated and filtered and it went through a process to clean the water in this lagoon here. So the lining was spaced, the lagoon was filled, the water went through a treatment facility, and then the treated water was then either put back into the ocean once it passed all the environmental quality requirements, or it was used for dust suppression on site. In Qatar, dust is a big problem, especially during dusty days, but also construction generates a lot of dust, and this is something we were very careful to avoid in our stadium sites. When the water amounts finished that were needed, and also when there was no more dewatering required, the water was either used or evaporated. That wasn't necessary. And then actually we encouraged and collaborated with our contractors so that the lining also didn't become a waste material. The lining was then folded and stored and cleaned so that it could be reused again in other projects. These things take a lot of involvement, interest, time. It's not something that can often easily be done. And for some situations, we have to remember that it's a change from business as usual. And so how do we encourage, celebrate, and make change where we can? So this is what the stadium looks like now. This is when the site was finished after the demolition and remediation work. This is during construction, and now the stadium is almost fully ready. There are 974 containers installed in the stadium. 974 is also the code for Qatar, so that's a nice alignment of the numbers. But also the sustainability and the legacy use of the stadium is that it will be demounted after the last game that it's going to play. And all of these custom made and custom produced containers are going to be reused in other facilities, either around the country or in different locations. So there's a great circular story to tell about the site from where it was, what had to be done, and where it got to. So we also wanted to be able to, I talked about celebrating earlier, but also put all the information together about all the great work that had been done. This isn't a 1 or 2 person job. There were hundreds of people working on various components of the sustainable development that we were trying to do, with recycling that we were trying to do, with managing the site in an environment, sustainability and safety way. So we recently published a report that talks, with collaboration with GORD, that talks about some of the best practices on our construction sites. And we can see some of the results that we have are super impressive. Sorry, I know how to do this. When we're talking about percentages of recycling that we were able to do with construction waste. Are you guys able to see the numbers, or is the picture blocking it, Orjan? Okay. And we're very proud of these numbers. We're very proud of the teams of people that worked on getting there, whether it was healthy competition between the stadiums, whether it was getting the consultants on different, you try to make it personal competition, and then everybody got vested interest in trying to find a new way of recycling or find a new source for their recycling waste. I think a key learning from this is, one, we were able to put it together in one report that can be shared, but also we built a community and a knowledge base of people that knew what to do in a site and managed sites better in their next jobs, but also creating an awareness in the market. So people were suddenly aware of, oh, hold on a second, there's a lot of this waste coming from the stadiums. Let's see if there's a business case or something interesting that we can do with that. From this article, there's a lot of really good stories. So I'd encourage you to go and look at them, but I wanted to pull out two that I was finding very interesting. In Al-Bayt Stadium, which is in Al-Khor, we had a couple of really useful reuse stories that were best practice. The rocks and boulders were reused both in the site and also to make a restaurant outside of the site in the park area, as well as wooden timber from other projects, from the same project, and that was made into different facilities. So these aren't things that you can put into a contract. You can encourage, you can I'm trying to find the best word. You can encourage or find ways to complement or congratulate. And I think that us talking about an event like this or talking about it in the publication that we had makes a good space for it to happen. We aren't the only people also. I mean, there is a great amount of work being done by other government bodies as well. I definitely would like to highlight the Ashghal Recycling Manual. This is a manual produced by the Public Works Authority, and it talks about the potential uses of materials that can be recycled. Whereas earlier, we didn't have perhaps the standards in place or the knowledge in place or the connections in place between the different organizations or projects. It's been a fantastic learning curve to see how this works. And projects have started to share when we see contractors either sharing materials they have on their sites to give to other sites or to process it and use it again on another site. And it's been very encouraging to see how that circles through. So final thoughts so that we can keep it short and sweet. I hope I'm still on time, Orjan. It's not easy, right? Like this isn't recycling. I always say is not a rocket science, but it is a very discrete way of connecting different parts of the system in a business and a system and the construction and the workers and everyone together in order for it to work. By having programs like ours where we're making this a very key part of the process, it has the options of improving the recycling market. It has the option of creating new opportunities, new connections, and I think that's a great legacy to leave. The knowledge sharing has been very important to us. There are lots of people working on all the projects that are related to the SC, whether it's in construction or whether it's in the infrastructure projects connecting to us. And so any kind of learning or knowledge sharing or establishing this network leads to sustainable employment. Qatar is a transient community. There's lots of people who come and go. And so often we have a challenge that knowledge is not kept here. And so I think this aspect of it deals with it well. And then just like Dr. Hedjazi had said, legacy is a very key component of the work that we do. So all of our stadiums have had a lot of planning and communications with the communities that they're built in order to have the most appropriate legacy plans built into them. That, of course, is a whole other talk, but I think that underlines the path to connect. It's not just building these stadiums for a tournament, it is moving the country ahead in its national development program, and also moving it ahead in terms of the pathway to a circular economy. And I just wanted to leave 2 points here. It's because we started with a quote for the country as well, but that really we can do all of this in a government organization or as a consultant or a contractor. But at the end of the day, every one of us has to make a decision to do that. So if I don't recycle, or if I don't encourage others to recycle, or put my pen in the right place, or make a decision not to take a plastic bag, none of this will change. We all have to do our part, and we all have to put our hands together in order for it all to work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And like you said, that there is such a huge construction program that's been going for so many years. There are so many stories to be told. So thank you so much for zooming in on this particular aspect of the program and giving these kind of case studies. There is a lot more information around this, and we're happy to speak to anybody who's interested. And there's some summary documents on Qatar2022.QA/sustainability as well available. I will come back to you for a question later on. And now we will move over to Dr. Gaia Pretner, who will give us a trip to, well, I guess a trip down memory lane, and also a trip to Milan, and for us to learn more about some of the amazing things that happened during Expo 2015 in Milan.
Thank you, Orjan. Thank you for the invite.
Pleasure.
It's really been a pleasure here. Yeah, it has been a little bit of a memory journey for me to prepare this presentation. I still get a little bit emotional when I speak about it. So I'm now working as Sustainable Procurement Manager for FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022, but I think I got this job because at that time I was working as a full-time sustainability consultant for EXPO 2015. That was the company that delivered EXPO MILANO 2015, the Universal Exposition. So this is going to be a little bit of a case study and also a journey. Now it has been past 6 years after the event, so there are some studies that also were able to capture the actual value of this event for the city of Milan, I would say for the country itself. I have tried to focus my analysis on 3 main dimensions. As also the professor was saying, in a city that wants to become circular, you need to focus on 3 main aspects. The building dimension, the mobility dimension, and the provision of key products and services. And this becomes even more key when a major event is going to happen in a city, because a lot of new buildings, both permanent and temporary, need to be developed. You will have a lot of visitors that will arrive for a very short period of time, and it will put a lot of stress on your transportation system. And you will also have an incredible increase of demand for different goods and services that the city has to be ready to provide in a very short period of time. For those of you that are not familiar with Expo Milano 2015, I think it's the case to give you a couple of numbers to let you understand the impact it had on the city, on the country, and the big work that it was behind. So as all universal expositions, it lasted for 6 months. So for the 1st of May to the 31st of October 2015, its main theme was feeding the planet energy for life, which was really were centered on sustainability of food production, of agriculture, how to satisfy the increasing demand for food. And it saw the participation of 139 official partners, basically countries. Here you can have a hint of different pavilions. We had 29 non-official partners, basically main sponsors. It required an investment of 3.2 billion euros, but this is a study published by University of Bocconi, conducted after the end of the event. It generated 31.6 billion of additional production in the whole country. So for those that are saying that investing in major events is just a loss of money, I would say Expo was actually a proof of the contrary. Of course, the decision you make in the development of the city, in how you develop the building, the infrastructure, and the products and service distribution have to be made in a wise way, so that they improve the growth of the city towards more sustainable practices rather than just creating white elephants. I think a little bit of key facts of Expo. So this is the map of the exposition site. We call it the fish. It was an area of 110 hectares, so pretty big. Just to give you an idea here, the main road that we call the Decomano was long 1.5 kilometers. I can tell you that here there was the metro station. And if I had a meeting with the New Zealand pavilion that was here, I had like 20 minutes walk to go for, so it took a while. We got 20 million visitors around the 6 months of the events. And during the last 2 months, we had peak days with 360,000 visitors per day. Basically, an entire city that moved into the exposition site. Now think that Milan has around 1.5 million of citizens, so it's roughly 1/4 of the city moving inside the exposition area. So it was quite challenging, I would say. Here you can see where the exposition site was positioned in relation to the city. So here it is the city center of Milan, and here there was the exposition site. The selection of the area was the outcome of many discussions. This was characterized by a lot of chemical industries in the 60s, which means that the area was deeply polluted. So the selection of this area was also performed with a view to renovate. There was a big renovation project to decontaminate the area from the pollutants. The only pre-existing building that was there was Cascina, a traditional building from the area. And we decided to keep it and to actually renovate it. And we obtained the LEED Platinum certification for the building. It is now actually hosting a training center, so it is still active. And for the whole temporary buildings, because when you host a exposition, all the participants country are supposed to build up their own pavilion. And it is a temporary building because this is the idea behind an exposition. So the organization started working with the Polytechnic of Milano to develop guidelines for all the participants on how to design and build sustainable temporary buildings. The aim was also to make them entirely dismantleable and reusable in other situations. And then I will show you some examples. So some of the solutions that were suggested were, of course, the adoption of green roofs, efficient lighting solution, the use of renewable energy, sourcing of sustainable material, like most of the pavilions were made with a certified FSC timber, and design that maximized flexibility and usability of the building at the end of the event. We needed to develop our public transportation system. Here you can see this is the map of the Milan Metro as it is today. Okay. When I moved to Milan in 2013, I can tell you that this purple line, Metro 5, actually was working only between Zara and Vignani. Only this short sector of the line was operative. So for EXPO, all these additional stops were developed. And you can see that it was quite strategic because this way Metro 5 was able to connect Metro Red that led to the exposition site with some key other stations. So Centrale and Garibaldi, that are the two main train stations of the city, were basically directly connected with line 1, whereas before you had to make additional changes. Metro 5 also leads to San Siro Stadium. That is another important, let's say, venue for the city that was not previously connected by the metro line. The Rofiera metro station was developed as well as the train station. So here you have basically next to each other the metro and the train station and the route that led to the exposition site. But next to the exposition site, there is also the brand new Milan Fair. So let's say this was an infrastructure that lasted also after the event and made possible to connect the Rofiera with the whole city center. We also had some agreement with Trenitalia, that is the national train company, to basically change their train routes. Normally trains of Trenitalia stops only in Centrale or Garibaldi, and to add an additional stop to the Rofiera, so that we had 236 trains per day that were able to connect directly people from all around Italy to Rofiera and so the Expo site. This mainly meant like something 130,000 passengers that could reach the site by train. And that's it. So let's say hosting the event encouraged the strong development of the metro system and the interconnectivity also from different types of public transportation, metro and train. Something that we wanted, that was in the plan to develop but didn't actually happen, was the Metro 4 line. You see here there is a dotted blue line that should have connected the grid to the airport of Linate. For various reasons, they didn't manage to build it on time. To be honest with you, they are still working on it. It is not operative yet. But let's say pushing for the development and approval of this major project that will finally connect the airport of Linate and also this area in the south west part of the city with the metro grid was a consequence of hosting the event. Finally, of course, hosting an event means the need to provide a lot of goods, food, and services. So again, EXPO 2015 partnered with the Bocconi University to develop the sustainable procurement guidelines that have to be applied to EXPO suppliers, to all the official participants, so all the countries and all the sponsors. Let's say that this was not exactly mandatory, it was more strongly suggested and encouraged. And the focus of the guidelines was on those products and services that we knew were key for any participants to deliver a successful event. So every pavilion was supposed to serve food and beverages, had to, of course, furnish its own exhibition area, was going to distribute or sell some kind of merchandise. Everything had to come in some form of packaging. And finally, during the 6 months of the event hosting, every participant was also supposed to organize some additional events like the national days or other kinds of events. So how to, let's say, organize a small events in the context of the major events. To push for the adoption of the guidelines, we thought it was a good idea to develop an award. We call it Towards a Sustainable Expo. This was an award developed in partnership between Politecnico di Milano, Bocconi University, basically the two universities that developed the two guidelines, the Italian Ministry for the Environment, and EXPO 2015 SPI as well. We had the participation of both official and unofficial participants, so both countries and partners and sponsors. And let's say the awards was focusing mainly on how much they were able to follow the sustainable design and building guidelines, how much they were able to apply sustainable procurement, and basically the best sustainable events that they organized. I put here two of the most, I would say, representative examples of sustainability of the design and the building. So the first one is the Monaco Pavilion. You can see it on the left on the exposition site. And then you can see on the right, rebuilt in Burkina Faso, and it became a Red Cross training center. It was made by containers. So I chose this example because I saw a little bit of parallelism with the Ras Abu Abud Stadium. The second one instead was from Coca-Cola. That was one of our official sponsors. So this on the left, you can see the pavilion on the exposition site as it was. And on the right, how it is now. It is a basketball court that was built up in a park in Milan. So two, let's say, nice examples of how to reuse temporary building after the event. And both, let's say, this second destination were agreed before the beginning of the event. So they already knew that they would have been ended up in this second location.
Thank you so much, Gaia. That's really interesting. And it's nice to see, you know, we've been making plans for a long time about the World Cup, and to see what's been done before and the practical examples and the insights from inside the event itself. Really nice. Thank you, Ghanim. I'm looking forward to hear from you. We've been watching your amazing developments in career and building of this the different businesses. So really interested to hear more about your journey, your philosophy, and your future plans, perhaps as well, if you have a moment to talk about that. So let's welcome Ghanim Al-Sulaiti to take over the presentation now. Welcome, Ghanim.
Thank you so much for hosting me, and I'm so glad and honored to be among all the amazing panelists and hearing you all guys talking about sustainability and kind of like how you incorporate that into your own field. And I'm so excited today to share my own journey on how I've tackled sustainability into the businesses that I created today and the opportunities that I was offered here in Doha. So, of course, let me introduce myself. So I'm the CEO and founder of Enbat Holdings, which is a vegan investment company that I've created a few years back. The idea of that was to kind of try to invest in sustainable, eco-friendly wellness and well-being and vegan concepts. As a moment, it's all in-house creation. All these concepts has been created by us and by me. But of course, in the future, we're definitely looking into creating more maybe opportunities by investing in other companies. So of course we're talking about Doha, but let me fly a little bit to Philadelphia, where the journey have actually started back in 2013. So I'm a graduate of civil engineering back from the Drexel University in Philadelphia. And at that time, that's the year when I was graduated. Just a few months before graduation, I was sitting in my apartment back in Philly, watching Good Morning America. And then this author called Kimberly Snyder, she came on board and she was speaking about her book and how her book has, how food have changed the way she feels and how food have changed the way she look. And she was just talking a lot about how certain food and certain dietary restrictions that she went on have developed a lot of changes in her physical appearance and her mental kind of well-being. And at that time, I didn't even catch any of that. I was like almost hesitant to even understand what she was, trying to imply. But something in me wanted to go and find out what the book was talking about. So I went to Barnes and Nobles, which was like a few blocks away from my apartment, picked up the book. And in Barnes and Noble, you don't have to buy the book to read it. So I've opened it. I read the first kind of like few paragraphs. And the moment she was speaking about how we need to kind of cut out dairy and not eat meat and not eat chicken, and I was like, oh my God, that's not for me. I used to eat all of that. I put the book back. I went into my life, and then I was like, okay, khalas, this was just like a thing that's not for me, apparently. And during that week, I started seeing a lot of advertisements everywhere. Open the TV and there's this vegan campaign coming up. And then I'm walking in New York City and I'm seeing these big billboards about almond milk and non-dairy milks. And I'm like, oh my God, there's something telling me to go back and read that book. So I had to go back and buy the book. At that moment, I was thinking that book will not change anything I believe in. It will just be a book that I would read. And that's it. So I took the book, went back to my apartment, started reading it loudly. And I had my friend who was living with me at that time. And every time I was reading any of her, let's say, tips of how to, let's say, eat more plant-based or cut out the dairy or the animal products, I was laughing. I was laughing so much. I was like, oh my God, how can she say something that I'm eating every single day? How can she say that milk is not good for me? How can she say meat is not good for me? And from that point, I think that's when the change has started. So when you are presented with any, let's say, unfamiliar idea, you always have these kind of steps that goes into your mind, which is denial, then maybe accepting, then embracing it. So I feel like I went through that process. And I remember the first thing I said, you know what, let me try her smoothie recipe. And that was like actually not great because it was lots of greens and lots of fiber. And for me at that time, I didn't love vegetables as much. So for me, that was like a huge step. And that's when the journey has started. And that's when the book called The Beauty Detox. And the book was talking about how certain foods can actually make you feel a certain way and look a different way. And at that time, that interested me a little bit. And I started researching a lot and reading a lot of books about it, because at that point, it was a shocking news to me, saying how the body doesn't digest dairy really well, and our body is not meant to eat animal products. And I was like, okay, well, I've been eating it for a while. I haven't felt any different. But then when I tried eating plant-based, I started feeling amazing. I started feeling, wow, look at this energy that I have. Look at that, that digestion kind of process that I was going through. And I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling actually more lighter, more energetic. And I was like, whoa, there's something in it that's apparently making us, you know, feeling better. So I started like, you know, trying to kind of tap into the vegan kind of, let's say, cuisine. And I think from that point, my goal was never to be vegan. My goal was to only feel better and feel more energetic. And I remember on 2014, back in sports day, it's the first sports day since I came back to Doha. And I remember waking up and I say to myself, oh my God, apparently I am vegan now, because I haven't eaten any meat or chicken or fish without me actually wanting to be vegan. And I took a promise to myself. I said, okay, you know what? Let me go vegan for almost 1 year and let's see what happens. I'm already vegan for 3 months, but now let's actually officially go vegan for the next year. If it doesn't work, I'll just go back. If it works, I'll just continue. And from that point, I'm still vegan and I'm still on this lifestyle. So apparently it works. However, a year after that, I started questioning everything. I started questioning my beliefs. I started questioning my culture. I started questioning everything that we were raised to believe in what good for us and what's not good for us. And people started asking me lots of questions and started coming to me with questions that I didn't have the answer for. And at that time, I decided to, like, you know what? I said, I don't have the answers. I need to look for those answers. So I went on a mission to travel to a lot of countries on the search for answers. I decided to travel to countries that people have lived on this lifestyle, on a plant-based lifestyle, and start asking them questions and start finding some answers, because I was waking up every day at that time saying, oh my God, am I crazy? Because everyone around me telling me, Ghanim, you're gonna die. Ghanim, this is not great for you. Ghanim, you come from the Middle East. Being on a vegan diet is not the ideal situation. So I had to go and find places. So the first place I went to was Beijing, actually. And I met this amazing old guy, actually. He was maybe 80 plus. He was working in this restaurant that is vegan. He didn't speak English, and that was the first encounter I had with someone who was on a vegan diet. And I remember we had a conversation without him speaking English. I don't know how, I don't know what. We did have a conversation with like a lot of signs and this, but we did have a conversation. And he recommended a couple of books that he had in the cafe. And from that point, I started becoming so passionate about it, because I was seeing, oh my God, he's 80 plus, he's still working, he's still moving. He doesn't walk with any assistant. He's so energetic, he looks young. And I'm like, oh my God, there's something wrong with us here in the country. Every time I flew back to Doha, I'm like, oh my God, everybody is sleeping, people are not aware of what's going on around the world. And I feel like at that point, I said, you know what, let me travel more. So I've been to 33 countries in those 2 years, 2014, 2015, and in 2015. All of these countries, from Jordan to Singapore to Italy to Morocco to South Africa, on the search to meet people living on this lifestyle, getting answers. And one day in Paris, 2015, I was sitting in a vegan cafe, and this guy, actually this cafe didn't have an English menu, and I didn't know how to order. And I was asking if this is vegan or not. And when you go vegan, you don't even trust the vegan places, and you have to always ask, be like, is this vegan or it's not? So I was trying to understand, and then this guy behind me who was waiting in line came and helped me, and he was like, oh, this is what it is, and he started like translating it. A few minutes later, I had a conversation with this guy, and apparently that guy was the owner of that restaurant without me knowing that. And then we had a nice conversation. I said, okay, let's exchange some numbers. He went with his life, I went with my life, and in 2 days I was coming back to Doha. But then just before flying back to Doha, I said, you know what, I need to meet this guy, at least to talk about just the business, I don't know. And that's when it clicked in my head. Those 2 days after I met this guy and saw the vibe in that restaurant and how people were happy and the impact that it had on the community around that city and around that area, I was like, oh my God, I need to create something like this. Because every time I was coming back to Qatar, I was thinking, we are lacking a space that can get people inspired, but also educate people and raise awareness. How can we raise awareness? How can I educate the people in Qatar to live a better lifestyle? I was also, every time I was coming back, people were asking me how to go vegan. How can I try this? How can I give it a try? And I couldn't, reach all of these people and try to convince them the way I was convinced. I was convinced not because just the food was great. I was convinced because the people that I met, the nature kind of like adventure that I went on, all of these things together have made me go on this journey and this lifestyle. So I was thinking, how can I make people go through that journey without them traveling around the world and finding all these people? And how can they be? Because they need to be inspired. It can't be just a trend. It can't be just a thing that they follow a lifestyle and then just bounce back. And that's what was the challenge. The challenge that I was faced with was, how can I convince a culture that was living on meat, chicken, and fish, and lots of cheese, and lots of dairy, and lots of illnesses, and obesity at the highest rate, and all of the diseases that is haunting us till today, and convince them to start eating more fruits and veggies and step away from the animal products. I started with trying to see how I changed this lifestyle and how I've done it gradually. And I've been saying this from day one. This is not something that you can jump into. This is something that you have to like ease into it. And I would always say like the word vegan-ish. That's what people need to kind of, let's say, aim for, not to go fully vegan, because it's sometimes very hard for people to jump in. It took me 1 full year to actually go fully vegan, but I know people that have done it in less and more than that. And that was the challenge. The challenge was, how can I know that I wanted to open a restaurant. I know I wanted to open a business, but well, there's no market. The market is not there. People are not interested in such thing. People don't understand such diet or such alternative. And at that point, people weren't very convinced in how healthy this diet is. Well, not until September 1st, 2016, that's the opening date of my Evergreen Organics, the first vegan cafe in Qatar, where 5 minutes before the opening, which was at 5 o'clock to be exact, I was sitting with my team, not knowing who's gonna show up, not knowing who's gonna knock that door, not knowing who's gonna be coming to the first vegan restaurants in Qatar. And I remember telling them, you know what, even if no one passed by, I'll be the #1 customer. At least that's what we know. I'm gonna try my best to make this business survive by eating there every day. And the shocking thing that I was actually not even prepared for, 5 minutes into opening, 5:05, and we have pictures to document that, it was full house. You're talking about 70 people showing up in a restaurant in the middle of the summer, September 1st, full humid outside. And I remember my dad came in that day and he was like, oh my God, now I get why you follow this lifestyle. And when he saw all these people that are not vegan, these people are just like people who are enthusiastic about health and wellness and want to be better, want to feel better. And I think from that point, everyone around me started believing in this lifestyle when they saw how people felt and interacted with not just the food, but the space that we created, because we created a space that's not just a cafe. We created a space that made from recycled materials, everything from the furniture, from the fabrics that we've been using, the prints, the inks that we've been using, everything was eco-friendly and sustainable. And we had bamboo straws, and we had coconut bowls, and we had all of these sustainable initiatives that never been introduced in Qatar. And people were shocked at that time with the level of I would say commitment that we had towards sustainability, but also wellness and health. From that day forward, the demand started growing. We went from having Evergreen to having multiple businesses. How did that happen? It happened by me personally started to think of what me as a customer, because I'm the #1 customer for my restaurant, what would I want to see? What would I want to use personally? And that's how all my businesses started popping. And you know, the funny thing, or maybe let's say the more interesting point, is that every business that I started after Evergreen was pretty much to cater to me personally and my current businesses. It might sound very ego kind of oriented, but at that point, that's the only thing that I can hold on to. I didn't have enough market study to base it on. I didn't have enough, and yeah, it might sound crazy, especially investing a lot of money in these businesses that are not just small businesses, have actually gone with big investments. But I think it's just at that point, I don't know how, but I felt great. That's not my recommendation to people to go and open businesses without a market study, but I definitely would say that it worked for me. So let's go through how the things have started. So Evergreen opened in 2016. Right after that, we recently, actually last year, we have launched our second branch at Hamad International Airport, which is considered to be the first vegan cafe in an international hub around the world. This is a huge milestone, not just for me personally, and not just for veganism, but it's also for Qatari businesses to make it in a international hub, because all of the other places are franchise concepts. And of course, we made sure that it's represent all of the sustainable outcome when it comes to the material and the innovation of bringing plants into an airport, which is very cold environment, and warm it up and give people the chances. And of course, how to get this is by, of course, seeing the statistics that Qatar Airways have been showing us lately, that 50% of the passengers that are using Qatar Airways today are vegetarians. They're not vegans, but they're vegetarians, which is very interesting statistics. And that's why I think Evergreen made sense to be opened at Hamad International Airport, to cater to all of these people. While we were developing Evergreen, we saw that there's this big kind of, let's say, variation between people who can afford Evergreen, especially as in the beginning, it was very expensive. It was a little bit for cater to the niche market. We had to think of how can we reach a more wider audience. And I think this is something that I had to kind of squeeze my head and try to see, like, there's a huge demand for healthy food and plant-based food, but it's not everyone can afford it. And that's where Green and Go came in. Green and Go is a concept that we created back in 2018, where we wanted to pop it in all metro stations. Now it's in the ECC metro stations, it's in Qatar National Library, and it's all in Workington, which is like a co-working space around Doha. We have 4 branches of Green and Go. The idea is that to create affordable, non-expensive, accessible, easy, simple, eco-friendly, sustainable. All the packaging you see here is PLA, which means it's made from cornstarch. So there's nothing that we hurt the environment when we do it. We recycle everything, and we use local ingredients as much as we can. While, of course, going vegan, you started thinking, okay, I'm putting the best ingredients in my body, but I'm not putting the best ingredients on my skin. And that's where Botany came in. Botany is a brand that I've launched in 2016 on the idea to create something that I can trust and something that I can actually use on my skin. And now we have a flagship store right here in Doha, in the Pearl, where we're selling full skincare range that are developed by us internally. It's not a white label. It's something that is fully chemical free, made from plants. You actually can eat these products without dying. This year, we've launched the spa version of the skincare line that I've created, which is at the Gate Mall here in Doha, where I made sure to bring all the techniques that I've learned during my studies and during my journey with the ancient Chinese techniques that can lift the face and can sculpt the face and give you a better skin with nature, with the help of nature. I feel like Doha is fully obsessed now with Botox and fillers, which I have no issues with. However, I feel like people needed an alternative here in Doha. That's where I said, you know what, we need to create a model in Qatar that represents using everything sustainable, everything eco-friendly when it comes to all the products, all the ingredients, and try to enhance people's kind of, let's say, skin and faces with natural products. It's very niche market as of now, but it's definitely picking up. And we are seeing a lot of people saying, you know what, I'm not doing any surgeries. I'm not injecting my face. I'm actually worried about all these chemicals going in my body, and I'm gonna go and do natural things that are there out there. Also and to be honest, most of the businesses that I created have been created during the pandemic, which is a very, very challenging thing, but I'm very excited and happy that I'm here today speaking of them, and they're still surviving and thriving. So Milk is a chocolate and ice cream concept that I launched in 2020, April, a week after the pandemic, after the closure, which was a huge challenge. And the idea from that is to create a guilt-free, sustainable, eco-friendly vegan concept that is dairy free for people who wants to eat desserts. And I'm the #1 customer because I wanted to eat ice creams. We live in a very hot city. We needed ice creams and no one was giving vegan ice creams, but not just like vegan junk ice cream. These are vegan, organic, raw, chemical-free ice creams that are really made from the best ingredients. Very recently, which is actually 3 months ago, just before the last lockdown that we've had, I've launched my last concept, which is called Talatin, which is a cultural vegan concept that was requested by the National Museum of Qatar to showcase that in Doha, we're focusing toward health and wellness and local food. At the same time, this was a request by Her Excellency Sheikh Mayasa to create a concept that is very modern, but at the same time can cater to all the tourists and the visitors for the National Museum and can represent something beyond just a food concept. So that's why it's called Talatin. We've linked the word Talatin with the 2030 vision, and we've read the 2030 vision, and according to the 2030 vision that Qatar have wrote back in 2008, they wanted people to go more plant-based. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, we had that written since 2008 and no one have done anything about it. And at least we have maybe a representation of that by opening Talatin. And one of my biggest business that I have till today is Papercut. Papercut came after the blockade that happened in Doha in 2017. And the idea of Papercut came because I was facing a lot of issues sourcing packaging for evergreen and botany at that time. And I was like, oh my God, I need to create my own thing. So we started a small workshop, very tiny in the new industrial area, where we created handmade boxes and bags. And that's it, made from eco-friendly, recycled materials from Doha. And it started by just catering to my own companies. And then suddenly other businesses started approaching. And one by one, after the blockade, you have all of this support that came from the community to enhance local products and local made packaging. And it's gone from having to be 150 square meters to today being 3,500 square meters factory that produces eco-friendly packaging for almost 500 plus companies in Qatar. And we're very proud to see the progress that it had and how the market have switched. And by offering the alternative without you trying to introduce it and educate, people will start using the product. So just to summarize this, I know I took a little bit longer than I should, but just to summarize this, the goal for me was to always educate and raise awareness. And you know what? Every time I start a business, I always say my mission is not to make money. And this is a very stupid idea. However, I can't do this and what I'm doing now if the mission is just about money. It would never be enough for me to do what I'm doing. It's never going to be enough for me to give my ideas and my thoughts and my time. Running 7 companies is not easy. I don't know when I'm gonna start, like maybe, I don't know, stop doing this kind of every opportunity that comes to me. But you know what? What I see is that there's a big gap in the market. There's a big demand when it comes to eco-friendly and sustainability and health and wellness. And I think this is kind of where the dream comes in. And my dream was to always see Doha achieving a better rating when it comes to the health and wellness, a better rating when it comes to our sustainability standards and our eco-friendly initiatives that we have, and by of course banning plastic and going to that beautiful future that we're all kind of striving for. And I feel like today as a panelist, we're all kind of looking at the same kind of impact that we are doing in our fields and how we can maybe have an effect. I know like our efforts might not be as big, but I'm sure with my efforts and your efforts, we will definitely be able to achieve what everyone is trying to achieve as countries or as organizations and institutes around the world. The future is very bright. I am very hopeful. I'm very grateful. And I'm very blessed to have my team who without them, I would not be able to achieve all of my businesses and where I am today. I am very also excited that all of my businesses are expanding, and I'm expanding all the businesses by opening different locations and by innovating my offerings and innovating the way we're doing, I would say, food and F&B or even skincare or even packaging. One last tip that I would kind of maybe, not tip, but last maybe a sneak peek of what I'm kind of thinking of. I've launched a grab and go concept called Green and Go. That concept is based on packaging. No matter that packaging, if it's eco-friendly or sustainable, or that packaging is biodegradable or whatever it is, it's still waste. My current thoughts, I'm now putting people in a group trying to innovate. How can we still have a grab and go concept with no packaging? That's my next challenge. I want to eliminate waste by 2022. Fully, completely, no matter if it's PLA or biodegradable sugarcane or whatever you call it. And that for me is definitely affecting paper cup, because then I'm not going to use my packaging. However, I think this is the future, and that's how I want to live my life. No waste whatsoever. Thank you so much. And please follow the journey at embatholdings.com if you have any concerns and if you want to look at more of what we are doing.
Thank you so much, Ghanim. And what a nice presentation. I mean, that we see a lot of talks these days that a successful business needs to be driven by purpose, and it's the why rather than the what and the how. And I think you've showcased that this afternoon, and I think that also resonates with many of the people on the call today who are working in the sustainability field. That yes, we're in very different industries, but the why is what drives us to achieve what we're doing. We received a couple of questions for you, sir, if you don't mind. One is from Tom. He is asking, what do you think are the biggest barriers for people in general to go vegan, and what can we do about it?
Well, I believe that, as I said, going vegan is not for everyone. However, going vegan-ish is for everyone. I believe that a lot of the barriers are cultural barriers, things that we have been taught since we were kids, that is very hard to overcome and very hard to switch to. Take that idea and switch that. So I think what helped me a lot is learning my history and learning my culture, digging back in the history of why meat is so important to our region and why we're eating that way. That have made it very easy for me to switch actually from not eating it, because I found out that it's actually not really a culture thing. It's not a culture thing. It's not linked to our region. Our region actually was not eating a lot of animals because we didn't have enough money. We were not a very rich country back in the days, and meat was very expensive. People were trading with meat. So with that kind of philosophy, I made peace with switching to a plant-based lifestyle. But I think everybody needs to go kind of, let's say, back to history and learn from that, and then come back to where it is now. But the barrier, as I said, is very cultural. And it's the cravings, and that's what I'm saying. You'll have to kind of switch your cravings slowly, and by eating more fruits and vegetables, your taste buds start changing naturally, and then you start not craving the meat anymore because you've just made your body a little bit more alkaline. And when you're alkaline, you're craving more alkaline food, and that's just science talks, I guess.
That's nice. So Tom, it seems like you need to go and read the history of your country and then see what you ate back in the days there, and then see if it's cultural. He's talking about convenience, taste, health, awareness, etc., etc. But I think the culture has a big component to that as well. Martin is asking perhaps a question for Gaia. Is there a plan to have vegan food stalls at the FIFA World Cup?
For sure, there will be vegan option. I wouldn't say, at least for what regards food and beverages concessions inside the stadium, I don't think it's going to be dedicated vegan kiosks inside the stadium. There will always be at least one option. What happens outside or in fan areas, I would say, maybe you can answer the question better than me, Orjan. But definitely one of the sustainability procurement objectives to make sure that there will always be at least one vegan option, one vegan and vegetarian option, for sure.
Next question is from Kofi, and this is going to be our last question, I suppose, is for Dr. Talar, who's he's asking if you can give an indication of any of the legacy uses for the World Cup infrastructure, sort of linked with your talk and Dr. Alexandre's talk, I suppose. Just a quick overview.
I think we can hold a whole other session on that, but a lot of our stuff, Kofi, is on the website, on our SC website, so you can have a look there. Each one of our stadiums has a different legacy story, and so it's really a specific one for each. The Ras Al Boud Stadium's legacy is to leave a better site and to reuse the containers. All of our stadiums have a demountable upper tier. So if you can imagine the tiers in a football game that you're watching, the top tier is designed to be demountable so that they can be easily removed, and it doesn't generate a lot of waste removing it as well. And those chairs will be donated and managed in different areas or different sites, even to build smaller sporting venues in different areas. We have a large amount of work being done in terms of knowledge legacy, in terms of building a database and collaborations with Qatar National Library so that the learnings and the reports go there where the knowledge base can be put into legacy. And then we also have several legacy programs. Challenge 22 is one of them at SC, where competition was done for people to showcase their innovations. And some of these will be in the World Cup next year. Also, Generation Amazing has its own legacy in terms of reaching around the world and people in football. If you'd like to know more about the stadiums, feel specific questions or any of the stadiums, please feel free to contact us if there's something more information you'd like than what's available on the web. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dr. Talar. And with that, at 5:30, we're gonna close the session. First, I want to thank all the participants for your attention and for your questions and participation. Thank you very much. And of course, to our esteemed panelists, Dr. Alexandre had to leave us just a moment ago. Thank you, if you can hear us. Talar, Ghanim, and Gaia, thank you so much. I really appreciated this session. It was really quite interesting for me as well to hear from you, and I think the participants enjoyed it too. We are hoping to be able to host another session on something similar related to circular economy in August with Yazur. Like I said before, if you have any ideas, please let us know. And we have some ideas if you don't have any ideas, of course. We will also be posting this recording on Yazur Institute's YouTube channel in a few days. So if you have any friends who might have missed it or you want to show it to a friend, please feel free to do so. So once again, thank you so much and hope to see you soon again. Have a nice evening and bye-bye.